If you only watch one video before your fantasy draft, this is the one that's absolutely going to help you the most. Nobody wins their fantasy league on draft day, but you can absolutely increase your draft by crushing it with the right strategy and implementing the methods that I'm going to show you in this video. I've drafted over 300 best ball teams this offseason. I've written over 100 articles for Fantasy Pros. I've appeared on countless different podcasts talking about every aspect of fantasy football. I'm going to use all that knowledge to give you a strategy that you can implement in your home league. 2024 draft boards, they look so different to what we saw a year ago in 2023, much like 2023 looked different to 2022. And home leagues look so different from everything else. They look different from your mock drafts. They look different from best ball drafts. We are going to go through it all. Hero RB remains one of the best strategies that you can implement, particularly in home leagues, because it allows you to get that running back early, but also still hit on the other positions. It's really important in redraft leagues to not get left behind at the running back position, because by the time you get to round 5, the running backs, they've been pushed up so far that the quality, you could be looking at guys like Austin Eckler and try to decide if you want them as your running back one. Maybe 2 years ago, maybe even 1 year ago, we might have wanted that, but not in 2024. In underdog best ball drafts right now, only 12 running backs go in the top 50 picks. Meanwhile, on ESPN, Yahoo, and NFL, there are 12 in the top 30. Getting left behind at running back, it can really hurt you. But that doesn't mean that we need to load up on lots of running backs early. We have to be selective about when we take running backs and who we take. This year, we're also seeing tight ends pushed up the board even more so. There's a surge of young, exciting tight ends on the back of last year, guys like Sam Laporta and Trey McBride. There's also the guys like Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, who still have elite ceilings. We're seeing elite quarterbacks going not quite as high as you might have seen them last year when Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes were all round 2 players. This year, though, we've still got quarterbacks all the way down to CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, who are being taken in the first few rounds. So how do we approach it? Well, this is my ideal draft for a 12-team league where you start the standard kind of lineup with 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, a flex spot, a defense, and a kicker. If you have 1 more wide receiver spot, which isn't uncommon in a lot of league settings, then we'll talk about how to approach that as we go through this. Round 1. If you can draft a running back out of CMC, Bijan Robinson, or Breece Hall, do that every single time. Those guys have huge upside. They can give you elite games in both the pass catching and the rushing game, and they're all on offenses that we expect to be good this year. Even Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall, they are going to be so much better set up this year than they were last year. Bijan, the quarterback upgrade is massive, combined with a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, no Arthur Smith dragging him down anymore. Breece Hall, a much better offensive line. Aaron Rodgers, even at 40 and coming off a torn Achilles, is going to be better than some of the awful quarterbacks that Breece Hall had to play with last year. Now, if you can't take one of those 3 running backs, then don't force a running back for the sake of it. I'd be open to taking Jahmyr Gibbs or Jonathan Taylor around the 111, 112 turn. But don't push them up just because you want to lock in and running back in round 1. Let's not forget there's some insanely good wide receivers in round 1 as well. Round 2 to 3. Now, if you didn't get a running back in round 1, there's still plenty of good options here. Guys like Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, they all work in this range. They're all going to give you really good volume. They've all got a clear path to a massive upside. I want to leave round 3 with at least 1 running back in redraft leagues. When I'm playing best ball, I'll quite often lean into real extreme 0 RB builds, but there, I know I've got 20 roster spots to work with. I know the system's going to bring in those running backs who score usable points, and it's about building differently. But in your home leagues, your redraft leagues, those running backs, they get absolutely sucked up out of there, and you're going to be left with poor options if you don't grab a running back early. But I also want 2 wide receivers, because the top end wide receivers in the first 36 picks, they have such a better range of outcomes than the guys who come later. Every year, people trick themselves into thinking, oh, I can just wait on wide receiver. Wide receiver depth's great. And the reason for that is because so many other wide receivers take the field at once. On any one play, you might have 3 or 4 wide receivers, but there's normally only 1 running back. We want one of those running backs who is going to be on the field a lot. We don't want one of these wide receivers who are only cycling in when a team is playing 3 wide receiver sets. Counting on them is a really bad idea for our draft strategy early on. Wide receiver 1 targets outside the second round. They're guys like Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors, Devonta Smith. I want 2 of those guys ideally. So if I can start with a running back in rounds 1 or 2 and then get 2 of those wide receivers, I'm going to leave round 3 feeling really happy. Rounds 4 to 5, elite onesie positions. Through the next couple of rounds, ideally I want to add one of both the onesie positions, tight end and quarterback. We call them the onesies because you start one of them. Simple, I know. In 12-team leagues, giving ourselves a positional advantage in weekly matchups, that can be massive. You don't want to be going out there and starting a tight end who might be averaging 7 points a week when your opponent's got someone like Travis Kelce who could put up 20. It's so hard to recover from that unless you are going absolutely nuclear at other positions. In this range of drafts, you'll see guys like Mark Andrews, you'll see Kyle Pitts, you'll see Patrick Mahomes maybe, you'll see Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. These are the guys you want to be targeting. And if you can stack the quarterback with their own tight end, a la Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid, that's a great way to take care of it, just lining yourself up with one really good offense for both of those positions. Round 6 to 10, I want to double tap wide receiver and I want to double tap running back in this range. Of course, if you see one of those elite quarterbacks or tight ends slipping into this range, don't be afraid to take them. But don't forget that you are going to want depth at wide receiver as a priority before we get down to those wide receivers who are coming off the field a lot of the time. And also, the running back room, it's really important to be conscious of it at this point because by the time we get to the double-digit rounds, things start to tail off quite a bit. If you see someone in your league drafting a defense or a kicker right now, that's great news for you because that means that the running backs, the wide receivers, that's one person who didn't draft one of them. Don't be tempted into taking them. We're going to cover defense and kicker shortly. So we want to add 2 wide receivers and 2 running backs. At wide receiver, I love Rashee Rice at this price point. In some formats, his ADP is starting to climb already, but scroll down, figure out where Rashee Rice is and build a strategy around him. And don't be afraid to take him maybe a round early because in best ball drafts right now, you're talking about a top 30 pick already. Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen are all wide receivers who I like. And if you have more than 2 starting wide receiver positions, this is an area where I want more wide receivers in it. That means that you are going to have to push running back slightly later. But if you're going to push one position, then the running back position, it's possibly the one you should be because we know it's a high turnover position due to injuries and we can work the waiver wire or make trades to get around that. The running backs in this range who I'm targeting, guys like James Conner, Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White and Raheem Mostert are all good value with good roles. Rounds 11 to 13, we're getting into the last third of the draft, and when we get here, I want to prioritize banking some upside and making sure I'm adding some more rookies. If they don't have a role straight away, then this is probably an area of your roster when you can cut these guys and move on from them. But when rookies hit, they hit in such a massive way that it can win leagues. I'd be prioritizing guys like Trey Benson, Jalen Wright, A.D. Mitchell, Marshawn Lloyd, and Jalen Polk. Those are really exciting prospects, and they have huge potential. Rounds 14 to 15. This is when we're taking the kicker and defense. If these are the last 2 rounds of your draft, this is the time to take the kicker and defense. When everything else is done, when everything's taken care of, scoring, it's so random at these positions. I'm never paying up for them. Year to year consistency, it's rare at these positions. And even if it is consistent, it's not worth paying up for considering what you're missing out on at wide receiver, running back, tight end. We're going to use Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard to mock draft. It is insanely customizable. You can sync it to your leagues and automatically copy the settings in. Then it'll adjust the rankings for that. You can choose which expert rankings and insights you'd like to see, including mine, which are part of the expert consensus rankings of over 100 people from across the fantasy football industry. There's no waiting around for other people. Nobody taking 6 kickers in the mock draft. Instead, we can mock draft against the wizard, get feedback from top experts on our drafts. Check out the link in the description below to start your own mock drafts right now. If you are finding our videos for the first time, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button down below. We are ever so close to 3,000 subscribers. Here we do Dynasty, we do Best Ball, we do Redraft, we do DFS. We get you cooking all year long. The Mock Draft Wizard, it allows us to choose a variety of settings. For this one, I'm using a half PPR format. We're going snake draft, of course. I've got the 6th pick in this draft. You can see that we've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex, defense, and kicker. The draft starts and you can see CMC, Tyreek, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and Bijan Robinson all go off the board. So this is an easy click for me. We're going Breece Hall to keep trying to implement the strategy. In rounds 2 to 3, now because I've got that running back, I need 2 wide receivers. If I don't get those 2 wide receivers, I'm not going to feel happy about how my team looks. We take Drake London, and then in the 3rd round, I'm still looking at wide receiver, and you can see in this one, the wide receivers haven't gone off the board because the quarterbacks have been pushed up slightly, so I'm going to have to bear that in mind for how I want to approach the quarterback position going forward. We'll take Devonta Smith, my guy. Little bit of a reach compared to the Fantasy Pros rankings, but his upside in this new offense is huge. Malik Neighbors goes 1 pick before me, which really would have thrown me. If he'd still been there, I would have wanted to take him and see whether we could work the draft strategy out in a different way. But as it is, he goes off the board. We've had a few of the elite quarterbacks go, a few of the elite tight ends, but Patrick Mahomes is sitting there, and that's too good to pass up in the 4th round. Mark Andrews goes, so my elite tight end options, there's less of them, but Trey McBride absolutely could be the tight end 1 overall this year. From the point where he took over and Zach Ertz wasn't on the team at all, he averaged more yards per game than Sam Laporta. It was only touchdowns that separated the 2 of them. And we know touchdowns year on year aren't sticky. If Trey McBride has positive touchdown regression this year, he could be a league winner. So through 5 rounds, the draft strategy, it's working out perfectly for me so far. I've got the Hero RB build. I've got my 2 wide receivers. I've got my elite quarterback and my elite tight end. Round 6 to 10, this is where I want 2 wide receivers and 2 running backs ideally. T. Higgins in the 6th is just an easy click. Yes, he might not be as good as he's been in previous years. Maybe he falls off at a point. But with Jamar Chase sitting out practice, perhaps there's a chance for T. Higgins to be even better this year. And then Rashee Rice in round 7. I mentioned him before. He should be going much higher. It was a brutal running back run, which maybe I should have prioritized one of those guys slightly earlier to make up for the fact that I hadn't taken a running back in the last 6 rounds, but we can still make this work. We're going to take Jerome Ford, who's going to be locked into early season production with Nick Chubb on the PUP list. And then in the next round, we'll take Chuba Hubbard, who again is locked into early season production. This is allowing us to now be able to sit back, play the waiver wire, maybe make some trades because we've got 4 really good wide receivers. If we need to move one of them to acquire a running back, we can, but we're set up really well to get some wins out of the gate. In round 10, we can play this best possible fit for our team. And right now, that's Brian Thomas, a rookie wide receiver, which helps us with our next range of a draft, rounds 11 to 13, where we want to be grabbing some more rookies. He is a rookie with huge upside, and I'm very high on Brian Thomas. We don't need to start him anytime soon with Drake London, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and Rashee Rice, unless he looks like he's really hitting the ground running. At this range in the draft, round 11, let's take Jalen Wright. Fantasy Pros Mock Draft Wizard is saying that we might not need to take him just yet, but I want to lock in one of those rookies with upside. And we can see that plenty of players go off the board after this, that maybe those teams didn't need a running back and he would have made it back to me, but I'm okay with that. And then let's add Bucky Irving for another rookie with loads of upside. Round 13, this is our last player that we're going to select before we get to the kicker and defense. So again, it's just about making sure that everything stacks up well. We probably don't want another quarterback because we've got Patrick Mahomes. We can figure out his week where he's on a bye later down the line. At running back, guys like Dameon Pierce, Alexander Mattison, not particularly inspiring. Wide receiver, Jerry Jeudy, Gabe Davis. There's some okay names there, but nobody who stands out massively. Tight end, again, if these guys are playing ahead of Trey McBride, things have gone wrong. We'll go back to the wide receiver well and take Dontavian Wicks, a guy who, if he hits in a meaningful way, could have huge upside. When the Packers talk about Dontavian Wicks, they always compare him to Davante Adams. Maybe he's never going to hit those kind of heights, but that's the kind of skill set that he has. It's varied and it's meaningful, and a guy like that, if it doesn't work out, we can drop him for other players that we need off waivers anyway. Next up, let's select our defense, and the team that I really like this year, it's the Texans. They've got Derek Stingley. We know they've got a really mean defensive line as well. I think the Texans defense is going to surprise a lot of people this year. And then lastly, moving over to the kickers, I don't really want the same kicker and defense because if both of those hit, it means that they're probably a low-scoring offense. So instead, let's move down to who plays inside a dome, really fun player, hits a lot of long yardage ones. Very happy with that. You can see the Mock Draft Wizard, it gave us an A-, so not quite perfect, but 92 out of 100 experts liked what we did there. So looking at the analysis from a mock draft wizard, we drafted 2 players ranked inside the top 3 at their position, Breece Hall and Patrick Mahomes. According to the mock draft wizard, if we drafted Brandon Ayuk at 4.7 and pushed Patrick Mahomes later, we could have scored 34 points more, but I'm okay with that. I want the positional advantage that having Patrick Mahomes gives me over having Brandon Ayuk. Week 12 looks messy because we've got Breece Hall, Drake London, T. Higgins, Brian Thomas Jr. and Koo all on a bye week. We'll deal with that down the road. Let's bank some wins. And by week 12, we might be able to even just give up a win. We could be so far out in front of everyone else. You can see on the sleeper alert that Dontavian Wicks is the number 3 wide receiver in our consensus sleeper rankings. Jalen Wright is the number 5 running back in the sleeper rankings. Rashee Rice got in the 7th round, 2 rounds later than he's ranked, so his price is going to creep up to reflect those rankings soon enough. That is your perfect draft strategy to take into your drafts this weekend. Implement this and I am sure you are going to have a successful 2024. Hit that subscribe button. We do Dynasty, Redraft, DFS, Best Ball. We keep you going all year long and we've got all the advice you need.